Good morning. Thank you for joining us for this important event, Confronting Hate, Strategies for Prevention, Accountability, and Justice. We always welcome the chance to gather with community leaders and civil rights advocates. These forums give us a chance to learn from one another. This particular convening will allow us to take stock of where we are and where we need to go in our joint fight against hate. I want to thank Assistant Attorney General Kristen Clarke for her leadership, for her long-standing commitment to this task, and for bringing us together today. This Thursday marks the 12th anniversary of the enactment of the Matthew Shepard and James Byrd Jr. Hate Crimes Prevention Act. As you well know, the act is named after two innocent victims of heinous crimes that occurred in 1998. Matthew Shepard, a 21-year-old student at the University of Wyoming, was robbed, tortured, tied to a fence along a country road, and left to die by two men who offered him a ride home from a local bar. James Byrd Jr., a 49-year-old African-American man living in Jasper, Texas, also accepted a ride home from strangers. They drove him to the remote edge of town, where they beat him, tied him by the ankles to the back of a pickup truck, and dragged him to his death. The investigation into Matthew Shepard's death found strong evidence that his attackers targeted him because he was gay. The three men responsible for killing James Byrd Jr. were well-known white supremacists. But while the men responsible for these killings were later convicted of murder, none was prosecuted for committing a hate crime. At the time, federal hate crime protections did not include violent acts based on the victim's sexual orientation. Existing laws also only covered racial violence against those engaged in a federally protected activity, such as voting or attending school. The landmark legislation bearing James and Matthew's names greatly expanded the federal government's ability to prosecute hate crimes. The law enables the Justice Department to prosecute crimes motivated by race, color, religion, and national origin without having to show that the victim was engaged in a federally protected activity. The act also empowers the department to prosecute hate crimes committed because of a person's sexual orientation, gender identity, or disability. We are honored to be joined later in the program by Matthew's parents, Judy and Dennis, and James' sister, LaVon. The law named for their loved ones has made an enormous difference in DOJ's ability to prosecute and deter acts of hate. The passage of the Hate Crimes Prevention Act in 2009 is an integral part of an important legacy. The Justice Department was founded during Reconstruction to enforce the rights promised by the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments. This required confronting the racist conduct of the Ku Klux Klan and others who used terror and violence to keep African Americans from exercising their civil rights. Though the Justice Department's work to address unlawful acts of hate has a deep history, it remains an immediate and pressing charge that constantly requires new thinking. That is why my first directive as Attorney General was to order an internal review to determine how the department could deploy all the tools at its disposal to counter the rise in hate crimes and hate incidents. While that review was nearing completion, Congress passed another piece of anti-hate legislation, the COVID-19 Hate Crimes Act and the Jabara Hire No Hate Act. In light of our internal review and that new law, the Justice Department is taking a number of steps to enhance our ability to combat unlawful acts of hate. Deputy Attorney General Lisa Monaco and Associate Attorney General Vinita Gupta are ensuring that the department improves incident reporting, increases law enforcement training and coordination at all levels of government, prioritizes community outreach, and makes better use of civil enforcement mechanisms. As part of our efforts, we assigned a Deputy Associate Attorney General to lead and coordinate the department's anti-hate crime and incident resources. Rachel Rossi is serving as the department's inaugural anti-hate coordinator, and I am glad you will have the opportunity to hear from her later today. Pursuant to my directive and the COVID-19 Hate Crimes Act, the Civil Rights Division is also expediting its review of federal hate crimes. Over the past 6 months, the department has charged more than 17 defendants with federal hate crimes, including in the death of Ahmaud Arbery. We have also secured convictions in a number of notable hate crime cases. For example, in 2019, a shooter killed 1 and wounded 3 others at a synagogue in Southern California. The defendant then set fire to a nearby mosque. Last month, that defendant pleaded guilty to all 113 counts and agreed to spend life in prison without parole. The Justice Department will continue to use its criminal enforcement tools effectively, but we understand that our work must go beyond criminal prosecutions. So we are also hard at work maximizing the use of our non-criminal resources. For example, I have directed the establishment of a full-time language access coordinator within the department. In doing so, we hope that improved language access will improve people's willingness and ability to report their experiences with hate. In another example of non-criminal action, the Civil Rights Division recently worked with the Department of Education to identify resources for students and families facing pandemic-related harassment. In keeping with our commitment to language access, that report was translated into several languages. In addition, the department has revitalized the Community Relations Service, and I'm glad that you will have a chance to meet our CRS acting director later today. A few weeks ago, I hosted a listening session with Secretary of Health and Human Services Becerra. The purpose of that event was to help shape guidance aimed at raising awareness of hate crimes during the pandemic. That session was yet another reminder of the painful and profound ways that bias-motivated violence harms entire communities. At the Justice Department, we are committed to using every tool at our disposal to address unlawful acts of hate. We are grateful to call you partners in this effort. This work is not easy, but it is essential. Thank you for joining us today and for all that you do to confront hate.
Good afternoon. As we commemorate the passage of the Matthew Shepard and James Byrd Jr. Hate Crimes Prevention Act, and as today we've heard from advocates, academics, law enforcement, civil rights litigators, and those representing communities that are impacted by hate, it is both clear how far we've come and clear that there's so much more to be done. After Attorney General Garland's first directive to order an internal review of the department's resources and work to counter the rise in hate, Congress passed the COVID-19 Hate Crimes Act and the Khalid Jabara Heather Heyer No Hate Act. Informed by the Department of Justice review and armed with new legislative tools, on May 27th, Attorney General Garland issued a comprehensive memorandum on improving the department's efforts to combat hate crimes and hate incidents. And the Attorney General appointed me as the Department of Justice Anti-Hate Coordinator. I am honored to be serving in this role. Hate is unique in its ability not only to deeply harm its individual victims, but to reverberate across entire communities to instill fear. Hate sends a message that by the nature of who you are not welcome, you are not accepted, and even worse, you are in danger. And this collective trauma experience is not confined to acts that qualify as a hate crime under a legal or statutory definition. Hate crimes, hate incidents, bias, bullying, discrimination, all still have tremendous power to invoke widespread instability and trauma across communities. And when we know that the vast majority of acts of hate are not charged as hate crimes, the true eradication of hate will require a comprehensive, coordinated, and multifaceted approach beyond enforcement alone. For this reason, a core function of my role is to bridge the gaps across the department's wide-ranging anti-hate efforts, including criminal and civil enforcement, grant making, reconciliation and restorative justice efforts, and the tracking and reporting of hate crimes. I will also work to enhance collaboration with our law enforcement partners, community organizations, and other stakeholders. And I will seek to ensure that the responses across the department are survivor and community centered. So, of the many efforts ongoing across the department, today I want to focus on three broad areas: one, resources; two, guidance and funding to increase reporting; and three, community engagement. First, I'm serving as the department's central hub for law enforcement and community members to access department anti hate resources. In doing so, I am working to enhance and coordinate all department tools, ensuring they are culturally and linguistically accessible and that they are effective and useful. Resources are only as good as the ability to access them and to use them by communities, by law enforcement, by our own U.S. attorney offices, and especially by victims and survivors. Second, I am overseeing the department's work to establish guidance and to issue funding aimed at increasing the reporting of hate crimes and incidents by victims and law enforcement agencies. Better reporting means better data, which means better understanding of trends, better deployment of resources, and better prevention and protection efforts. The department is working to issue guidance to state and local law enforcement agencies on the creation of online portals to accept complaints about hate crimes and hate incidents and to collect data disaggregated by protected characteristics. We are also working to issue guidance and will administer the Act's grants for the establishment of state-run hate crime reporting hotlines. And we will seek to swiftly administer the Act's grants to transition to the National Incident-Based Reporting System, or NIBRS, which is a more sophisticated and detailed crime reporting system to increase real-time reporting and transparency and to allow for the collection of the kinds of data that will improve hate crime response. Third and finally, the department is committed to enhancing community engagement. Our work to support prevention efforts, enhance response, and provide the kind of support individuals and communities need simply will not be effective or successful without engagement and partnership with the communities that we serve. For our efforts and resources to be meaningful, first, they must be provided in language and through methods and platforms that reflect cultural competence. To do so, we will create a department-wide language access coordinator to ensure these principles are embedded across the department's work. We are also empowering United States attorney offices across the country through training and resources to enhance engagement within communities and with local law enforcement. We will also issue guidance to state and local law enforcement to expand public education campaigns to raise awareness about hate crimes and to reach out to victims of crimes. And we'll continue to promote trauma-informed and victim-centered responses and healing, including after a hate incident has occurred. For example, in May, the Office for Victims of Crime released a solicitation to support community projects devoted to promoting awareness, healing, and reconciliation, as well as service access and resource development. And last month, the department awarded a social justice nonprofit $2 million to partner with community-based organizations throughout the country to implement field-generated, victim-centered, culturally responsive hate crime projects. It was my privilege to speak with you today and talk a little bit about the work ongoing in the department. Thank you all for your ongoing work and for your continued partnership in this fight to eradicate hate. This is a fight that will require all of us. I will now turn it over to Assistant Attorney General for Civil Rights, Kristen Clarke, for her closing remarks. Assistant Attorney General Clarke, thank you for your leadership in the department's fight against hate and for hosting this critical and wonderful event.
Today, we saw the many ways hate rears its ugly head. From online harassment and verbal threats, from church burnings and attacks inside houses of worship, from physical assaults and mass murder. All crimes and incidents have one thing in common. They are intended to terrorize individuals and families and entire communities because of their race, religion, disability, sexual orientation, ethnicity, gender, or gender identity. While hearing these stories today was undoubtedly challenging, I hope, like me, You find strength in the fact that people all across the country showed up today to learn about how they can confront the rise in hate crimes and hate incidents. It gives me hope knowing that there will always be more people willing and ready to stand up to hate than those who are driven by it. But there was so much more to take away from today. I found courage by learning from those who have previously challenged hate crimes. As Attorney General Garland noted, the department is truly grateful to those whose years of advocacy and activism made passage of the Matthew Shepard and James Byrd Jr. Hate Crimes Prevention Act possible 12 years ago. Civil Rights Division prosecutors have excelled over the last decade at handling hate crimes cases and at holding perpetrators accountable, thanks in part to this critical federal law. Standing up to modern day hate remains one of our top priorities in the Civil Rights Division. You heard today that prosecutions alone cannot address the many forms of hate crimes and hate incidents and the lasting injuries they cause to people and to communities at large. This convening recognizes work that is happening right now to stop hate and to help those harmed by it to heal and even become leaders in this cause. We're equally grateful to those whose recent activism made the COVID-19 Hate Crimes Act and the Jabara Hire No Hate Act a reality just last May. Thanks to this act, we now have a critical foundation for efforts beyond prosecution. Indeed, hate prevention efforts and seeking redress outside the courtroom are a part of a comprehensive approach to this work. As you heard, the Attorney General also charged DOJ leadership with ensuring that the department improves incident reporting, increases law enforcement training and coordination at all levels of government, prioritizes community outreach, makes better use of civil enforcement mechanisms, and coordinates the department's anti-hate crime and incident resources. All of this constitutes a valuable roadmap for change. Perhaps most inspiring was the courage displayed by the Shepard and Byrd families, by survivors like Taylor Dumpson, and by all of the other incredible advocates who presented here today. Their presentations are vital reminders that each of us plays a key role in the battle to confront and prevent hate in our communities. They challenged all of us to find new ways to confront and prevent hate in our daily lives. That may mean speaking up to address misinformation and online bullying if you see it on social media platforms. As LaVon Harris, sister of James Byrd, reminded us, that may mean being intentional about educating young people about tolerance and embracing the diversity that makes our nation unique. For the many practitioners and advocates with us today, that may mean revisiting traditional legal frameworks with fresh eyes to find creative solutions for modern-day problems and, where appropriate, working together to identify legislative improvements to hate crimes laws. Each one of us must find a way to put the words and lessons from this conference into action in our professional and personal lives. There is no doubt confronting hate can be daunting, but I truly could not be prouder to be working with you to confront this challenge together. On behalf of the Civil Rights Division, we thank all who spoke from the heart and made this convening so meaningful. We also thank particular individuals without whom this event could not have happened, including the Hate Crimes Conference Planning Committee led by Deputy Assistant Attorney General Jonathan Smith, Senior Counsel Jen Robbins, and Policy Analyst Angela Washington. Of course, there are many more people to thank for the development and execution of this event and who have also been integral to the important work of the department's anti-hate efforts. Our appreciation extends also to the dedicated career people of the Civil Rights Division. The final note of gratitude goes to all of you joining this convening. Your continued efforts to provide the Civil Rights Division and the Justice Department with the valuable feedback we need to move forward to combat hate are truly appreciated. We look forward to continuing to serve alongside you on the front lines in the battle against hate, to standing firm in the face of animus and hate, and to speaking with one voice about the values and principles that must animate and drive our never-ending pursuit for a more just and perfect union. I will close by quoting Dr. Martin Luther King, who observed, "When your days become dreary with low hovering clouds of despair, and when our nights become darker than 1,000 midnights, let us remember that there is a creative force in this universe working to pull down the gigantic mountains of evil, a power that is able to make a way out of no way and transform dark yesterdays into bright tomorrows."